Welcome to our webcast today, Collaboration Without Consolidation, Building a PSAP of PSAPs. I'm Carrie Lafavio, editor of APCO's Public Safety Communications. With me today is our editorial director, Shannon Piper. I'd like to get us started today by thanking our sponsor, Avtech Inc. Avtech provides Internet protocol-based dispatch console solutions for public safety, transportation, utility, business, and government markets. For more than 30 years, customers have chosen Avtech's award-winning technology for their mission-critical dispatch centers. There are nearly 2,000 Scout VoIP consoles installed worldwide. We appreciate their support. A few housekeeping notes. To view this webcast, you'll need to turn off the pop-up blocker on your browser. If you want to watch the presentation in full screen mode, click on the button that says Enlarge Slides. This will open a new window. Just be sure you don't close the original window with the webcast console. Our speaker will be answering questions and addressing your specific concerns twice during the presentation. However, you can submit a question at any time by typing into the Ask a Question field and clicking Submit Question. That's the Ask a Question field, not chat. We are recording the presentation today, and an archive will be accessible at psc.apcointl.org within 48 hours. We'll provide you with a link at the end of the presentation. Once this webcast has been archived, you can log in as many times as you want or download a PDF of the presentation. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker. Greg Warner is the Director of Emergency Communications for Bonneville County in Idaho Falls, Idaho. He excels as a change agent and over the past 2 decades has improved efficiencies as Vice President of Operations at a Boise-based electronics firm, consulted for both small and large manufacturing companies, and brought best practices to life at county emergency communications centers. He holds an MBA from Northwest Nazarene University, Nampa, Idaho. Now let's listen while Greg discusses how Bonneville County, Idaho, and 3 neighboring counties have cooperatively deployed an open standard P25 digital radio solution and other common technologies to enable full function exchange capability for dispatching. Greg, take it away.
Thank you, Carrie, and thank you to all those who've taken time out of their day to listen. Hope you'll find something of value in the Eastern Idaho story. Ultimately, it's about each of us improving our situations and, in the end, providing a better public service. Maybe I can, start by giving a little more background on myself. Before entering the government sector, I was the Vice President of Operations for Western Electronics. They were a manufacturing company with several facilities located across the Northwest. While there, I found that I had an aptitude for seeing weaknesses in systems and cultural constructs. Because of this aptitude, I was given the task of fixing some of the weaker divisions in the organization. I have taken a plant from a 10-year loss of 14% to a pre-tax profit in 18 months, and improved throughput of another local organization, resulting in the closing of a Mexican plant and bringing the work back to the United States. I present these 2 examples to show you how it is I think, because this is what I do. Excuse me. Before coming on board with Bonneville County, I worked in law enforcement for several years in various leadership capacities. Much of that time was as a dispatch manager. When I began looking for new opportunities in emergency communications, I decided there were 2 things that I needed to be successful. First, was leadership had to be supportive and collaboratively minded. And secondly, the position had to have a tangible challenge and the resources to effect change. The challenges at Bonneville County were intriguing, and I look forward to the opportunity. It appeared that nearly every aspect of the operation was in some form of duress. No fault of any group or individual. That's just the way it had become over the years. Their center had a database administrator who was overwhelmed with system failures, and most of the responses were reactionary. However, if we could hold things together just for a time, the upside potential was incredible. Bonneville County was teeming with opportunities. The region was already running on an open P25 architecture, and having worked with Captain Bruce Bowler of Madison County, Idaho for years, I already had a sense that many of the PSAPs in the region were friendly to the idea of interoperability. If there was ever a time or a place to build an atmosphere of cooperation, I seemed to be in it. The intent was to build an open system with a high level of redundancy and failover, providing the citizens of Bonneville County with a more reliable infrastructure. In my opinion, the best possible architecture to achieve this objective was to be interoperable with other PSAPs in the region. The open system advantage is that everyone benefits equally from the association, but with a much better return on investment than any one PSAP could achieve on their own. Each participant realizes improved value for their citizens while helping to protect taxpayer investment. Additionally, the system design had to have flexibility to diversify and be modular enough to prepare for future migrations. Regional failovers must occur automatically, maximizing PSAP uptime. In short, the center was to be rebuilt on COTS hardware, open standard protocols, and have scalability. Nearly a year ago, we started focusing on 3 projects that needed immediate attention. The county was in the conceptual stages of a PSAP renovation that would double the current size of the 911 center and the associated administrative space. This slide shows the old center of 4 months ago. To date, half the building has been completed, and we hope to finish the remaining addition by mid-July or 1st of August. As you probably noticed, our center has windows. We've tried to abandon the dark basement, somewhat NASA look, and are trying to focus more on a business professional feel. The center was running on a 15-year-old phone system that was dying a slow death. Replacement parts were no longer made, and circuits were failing. We were told by the vendor if we ever had a power outage, the system would never recover. Over 60% of the phone stations had lost their anti-alley interface, and eBay had become the store of last resort. We simply didn't dare touch anything on the phone system. The phone system was being fed by a wall of 60 punch blocks. Currently, everything on the wall is being distributed through 10, and we consider that number will continue to reduce. The move to new systems freed up a tremendous amount of space. Excluding some radio equipment, these 3 racks run the entire facility. If required, the data center can now hold another 15 to 20 racks, just like these. And finally, the third objective was to set the center, get the center off the antiquated radio consoles and onto something that would give center full integration into the P25 radio network. All the PSAPs in the region were transmitting through an antenna array to nearby towers where they were propagated through an EtherStack backbone into the state radio system. With all the research that needed to be done and the RFPs that had to be written, we were feeling quite overwhelmed. However, the challenges did offer a unique opportunity. We were in a distinct position of starting over. Everything we were about to do was set in motion a profound shift in center and regional technologies. Over the next few months, we spent a substantial amount of time researching and developing both philosophical and technical roadmaps. Fortunately, we had a couple of things in our favor. First, Chris Bargowski, our 911 database administrator, had started reviewing phone systems a year before I had come on board with the county. And the county had saved a few dollars, so we had the financial fuel to make a few quick transactions. We decided that all decisions would be made with the region in mind. The days of being a standalone PSAP or an island unto oneself may be coming to an end for many. The architecture would also permit system sharing. Small PSAPs that don't have the funds to purchase or upgrade their own equipment would now have the option to do so via an IP connection, in essence allowing small centers to build out their PSAPs for the cost of some basic hardware and software, bandwidth, and maintenance. Our approach includes the view that all jurisdictions are free to choose what they will interface to and what they will interface with. Anyone can opt in or opt out at any time. Every jurisdiction will maintain their sovereign authority. The idea is to promote a cooperative environment made up of willing participants. To quote Chris Bargowski once again, we are building a PSAP community grid, or in his terms, the PCG. An environment where no one rules, where everyone can take on the load, where everyone has the potential to rise to the top. However, I can see the need for what I will call the anchor PSAPs, the heavy lifters that have the resources and willingness to support the cause. You know, before we leave this topic, there's an interesting behavior that is starting to form. It looks like this approach to interoperability is creating a smorgasbord or menu-like condition where participants are getting to choose what they want to share in. There may be those that are fully equipped but like a single aspect of interoperability. Everyone is in a different phase of purchasing equipment. Who wants to abandon equipment they've just purchased for quite a bit of money? There are probably dozens of reasons why an agency would pick and choose, but it does seem to illustrate that there will be no immediate moves to a common platform anytime soon. That is to say, everybody in a region or a state having the same CAD, phone system, or radio system. Currently, there are 4 counties involved in this project, but I hear that Clark County might be the next PSAP to come on board. If successful, Clark may be the underdog story for the state of Idaho. Clark County is the least populated county in the state, at a population of just under 1,000. They, of all counties, would have the toughest time generating sustainable resources, but it looks like they might be able to pull it off. We've had conversations with other counties in the area, and they've been very supportive. These meetings have produced a number of interoperable-based tasks. Nevertheless, each step has taken several months of dedicated focus before the initial implementation and introduction to participating counties. Our seemingly slow pace has generated a lot of friendly sweet talk trying to get us to move a little faster. However, we are trying to be methodical, yet flexible enough to change trajectory if required. The endeavors thus far have spawned countless projects. These projects are simply logged, and we press forward with the task at hand. Like most small counties, we are all suffering from limited resources. To help overcome this challenge, we started reaching out to other PSAPs, government agencies, and private sector groups to develop the regional, somewhat or short of, think tank. This worked brilliantly, significantly enhancing our intellectual property, individual capabilities, and accelerating throughput with zero fiscal impact. Additionally, this helped with relationships, especially with other counties. It was instrumental in creating an environment of trust and collaboration. And like a puzzle, everybody has a piece of the big picture. John Kindridge of Madison County, Idaho, happens to be the VPN or Hyper-V guru of the region. Mike Miller of Jefferson County, Idaho, has natural capacity for mapping and GIS. Sheriff Lynn Humphreys of Fremont County, Idaho, has an extensive experience and background in 911 technologies, and Chris Bargowski of Bonneville County has a strong background in software development. Everybody has a role to play. Everyone has a part. For me personally, this is the hallmark of the Eastern Idaho story. Look how much is getting done by a small group of unfunded counties in a rural Eastern Idaho communities. Thus the term, a PSAP, of PSAPs. I suppose, in the final analysis, interoperability is a statewide project. However, in Idaho, all 44 counties are pretty much their own country and can make decisions for their own citizens. This authority structure, along with the geographic layout of the state, was somewhat of the motivation to start thinking regionally. Tying into a statewide system after building a regional infrastructure will be very simple to do. As you look at this map of Idaho, you will notice the state is made up of several natural barriers: mountainous terrain, rivers, lakes, and lots of agriculture. These conditions create a natural geographic separation, let alone of political and technical differences that may exist between locations. You'll also notice that generally there's only one highway running through the state, looking somewhat like a reverse J, starting at the top of the panhandle, running down and hooking back up. So let's start in the panhandle. In this area, we find Coeur d'Alene with a population of about 45,000 people. Well, the next largest city in the panhandle is Lewiston, with a population of 32. As we continue to travel southward, in the southwest region of Idaho, we have Nampa at about 83,000, Caldwell at about 48,000, and Boise at just over 400,000. These three cities make up over one-third of the state's entire population, the accumulated population of over 500,000. As we move eastward, we find Twin Falls at 45,000 and Pocatello around 55,000, and Idaho Falls around 58,000. These cities had nearly half of the state's total population and resources. Now, moving back up to Coeur d'Alene, their closest neighbor is Spokane, with a population of 210,000, and they're only 25 minutes away. I haven't spoken with Brad Kotenhauer, the director from Coeur County, but I'm confident that he has a relationship with Spokane because they represent the region's best first response resource. Lewiston, who is 2 hours away to the south, is more closely correlated with Clarkston, Washington, who is just across the river. And as you can see from the Boise area, we're about 7 hours away. With the ability to pull resources to the north becomes quite a challenge. As we continue to move eastward, we find Twin Falls, again 2 hours away from Boise, and then Pocatello, again another 2 hours away from Twin Falls, with an accumulation of 4 hours from the Boise area. Again, the location with the greatest resources. Now, the Pocatello and Idaho Falls area is about 50 minutes apart, so they can be each other's best possible resource. However, if things got significant, it turns out that Salt Lake City and the surrounding areas to the south would be the closest metropolitan area to the eastern Idaho corridor. The problem we face is response time. Any incident that is still peaking or expanding after 2 hours can benefit the resources from the nearest local large populous city. Otherwise, we're left to our own resources. All of the first responders I have spoken with in eastern Idaho agree that in the vast majority of the cases, we are our own best solutions. Thus, the focus on regional development. To better illustrate the idea that each county and a region has their own unique challenges and requirements, let's take a closer look at Bonneville County. By the way, that's a picture of Idaho there. To the west is a high mountain desert. This is where the Idaho National Laboratory, or INL, resides. INL is a protected government research facility, or in other words, Idaho's version of an Area 51. Bonneville County is the primary responder into this area. This is one of the groups we met with when we were starting our quasi-think tank with the area professionals. These guys have their own think tanks and do nothing but review software and hardware to ensure cybersecurity. They're way above our head. This photo was taken from one of the towers east of Idaho Falls, illustrating some of the mountainous terrains that we have challenges with. I have been told by backcountry officers that they spend a significant amount of time working with recreators who come to the area and in search and rescue mode as compared to doing law enforcement. This is the Idaho side of the Teton. As you can see, it is surrounded by agriculture, which typifies what you would find in many of the cities in Idaho. On the other side of this mountain range is Lincoln County, Wyoming, or better known as Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Bonneville County and Lincoln County officers often work together in backcountry rescues. But from a technological perspective, this is another opportunity to provide interoperability. To this point, I think we have defined what our setup is and the driving force behind our beliefs. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Craig. This is Shannon, and yes, we do have some questions coming in. And before we get to them, I just want to make sure that we thank our sponsor again, Avtech, for their support of this presentation. So we're going to go ahead and take a couple of questions. And Greg, the first one is coming to you from Robert in South Dakota, and he asks, if you were to point to a single binding principle that nurtured an open environment of collaboration when you were going through this whole process, what would it be?
Well, my brief life experience on this world, it boils down to trust. Trust seems to be the linchpin to all good and bad relationships. I think the word trust and value are synonymous. If you trust something, you value it, and if you don't trust something, it becomes somewhat of a burden. I think over time, at least in this region, we've developed a tremendous amount of trust amongst one another, and we know each other's strengths and weaknesses. So in turn, we're able to augment the entire feeling and spirit of how the region will end up going. It's going to take a lot of cooperation on a lot of people's parts to make it successful. And that's kind of the exciting part of what's happening here. Everybody's willing to participate and try to look at new things and discover new ways of doing it better.
Sure, that makes sense. In a slightly different direction, we have a question from Sherry in California, and she asks, when you were considering IP consoles, why did you choose Scout?
Well, that's a good question. When we were going through this process, we put out the formal RFP, got in the proposals, and went through them with a fine-tooth comb and did our due diligence, and even traveled to locations to validate or verify that we had gotten the correct system. However, in the final analysis, we weren't satisfied with anything we had received, and went to the county commissioners, and we had a clause in the RFP to shut it down. This caused a new research pattern to start taking place. I and the database administrator went off independently and started looking for a solution we felt would fit within the region. We finally ended up with Avtech independently. And to my surprise, as we introduced the concept to the other three counties, it was like they were just waiting for us to catch up. They said, yeah, we like that system. It turned out to be the perfect fit and the perfect solution of what we were trying to pull off in the region.
Great, thank you. I think I'm going to turn it back over to you now. We are getting a couple more questions in, and I encourage everybody to submit a question. If you want us to ask those questions, we're going to be revisiting that at the end of the presentation. So, Greg, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Radio consoles were the first step, and are the first step. We're currently in the process to interoperability. As mentioned previously, we started with this project. Each PSAP was transmitting through their antennas, just like a mobile or handheld radio. The backend system, at least in our center, was a mobile radio that was bolted to the console. Currently, after installation, we're transmitting directly into the P25 network, eliminating another point of failure. The Avtech systems are designed with several redundancies built right in. This illustrates how the design is laid out. If a gateway fails, because they come with two, there's an immediate transition to a secondary gateway. However, for some reason, both those gateways fail. The system reroutes via an IP connection to the regional gateways that are located at the other PSAPs. In the case of the perfect storm, and both gateways and the data lines have failed, we can now divert back to the outpost and transmit back out the antenna array. And for some reason, if the building vaporizes, we do have a couple of handhelds we could divert back to if needed. The criteria for a console selection was as follows. We wanted a system with a non-proprietary protocol. It had to meet NIDA standards. It needed to be easily geo-diversifiable, not only with the ability to be diversified within our local jurisdiction, but among regional partners. We did not want a system that was built on proprietary hardware with software written to interface with common standards. We were looking for software solutions that could run open standards on COTS equipment. We wanted regional utility and or failover capabilities. After Bonneville County's implementation, the console setup was replicated and applied to the 3 other counties, which resulted in a flawless installation. After the initial install, screen captures were taken, ensuring that each location would have a similar fit, feel, and function. At least 2 PSAPs purchased similar hardware, allowing for portability of systems and services if required. This is a nice part of having similar systems, is the ability to share backup equipment. There's no need for redundancy on a regional scale. However, Madison County, our regional VM gurus, and the Mavericks in the area decided to virtualize the radio system, and it worked perfectly. What's exciting about this is it has never been done before. More to the point, open systems are opportunities to innovate and problem solve at local levels. The region maintains a common intellectual property, greatly increasing its ability to support area systems. Finding common ground on a common platform has gone a long way to increase the overall value of both system and human capabilities. The next phase of our evaluation is to start working through system failure protocols and console interfaces. With a data link between PSAPs, each has access to one another's functionality. For example, PSAP can now patch channels that are foreign to their local radio system. As an example, so if we have Fremont County, three counties north of Bonneville, in the middle of a backcountry rescue on a VHF or UHF frequency, it could be patched to a channel that is only local to the Bonneville County via the IP connection. The data interface also gives participating centers access to one another's paging systems or the capability to open fire station doors in neighboring counties. PSAPs can communicate to each other via intercom, open secured doors, or other devices, view alarm conditions, and even view one another's cameras. Our facility is having cameras installed around the perimeter. If a failover is detected by another PSAP, they could, in fact, take a look at our perimeter and determine if something serious has occurred. Additionally, the regional PSAP are programming screen tabs on the console. With each county's radio configuration. There might be more design time required in this stage, but imagine having the capability of sending your dispatcher or dispatchers to another PSAP and have them pull up their home radio screen and start dispatching. There may be several reasons why something like this would occur, but the bottom line is the capabilities are in place needed. I realize that it takes more than a radio system and channels for a dispatcher to do his or her job. But this is the kind of flexibility we are hoping for. This is the kind of flexibility we want to achieve. Interoperability is definitely a game changer. And as we move through and look at other systems to implement in this region, that's the kind of flexibility we're looking for. Sheriff Lynn Humphreys of Fremont County has helped to bring this piece together. He contacted Robert Hughey from the state and made the deal that allows our region to have access to the state microwave system. It is through the state system that the PSAPs interfaces are being made. By the way, if you're listening, Robert, I was specifically instructed by other counties to say thank you. Everything seems to be working flawlessly. The AVTEC system also comes with an application program interface, or an API, which may enable information exchange between radio and CAD. When we expand on these capabilities and move them to a regional information sharing architecture, it gets quite exciting. There have been some interesting conversations at Bonneville County about how the API can be used. Quite thought-provoking, but as mentioned previously, we log the concepts and we'll get to them when the projects line up with the ideas. In this system, the word consolidation, which by the way also means alliance, would refer to both short and long-term fluctuations in workload. If successful, our public safety grid will be a dynamic shared network with scalability at a whim. But in this case, what I'm referring to is the human element. We have regional capacity now, so now let's access it. Jefferson County gets hit with a call cluster, yet thresholds have been set and predefined on the phone system, and the phone system starts to send these calls to another PSAP. We could also extend this into a cascading effect, so PSAPs could help PSAPs could help PSAPs. However, with everything, there's a downfall. There is a risk that this call cluster being sent is a brute force attack on the sender. In turn, if we don't have a manual way out, it could take an entire region down. This doesn't preclude the idea. These are kind of the things you have to think through as we continue to build out our open system. Senders would have the ability to transfer local services to another county. Of course, there would be agreements in place between PSAPs to ensure the best possible practices. So when would a transfer be acceptable? Well, it's up to the PSAP to decide, but it could be as simple as someone is sick. Can you take my calls? Or vacation. And what's interesting about this is a PSAP sends an employee on vacation, they all of a sudden have to pay another one to come in and take a seat. Well, is there an opportunity here where that doesn't have to occur, where everybody in the region takes advantage of the dollars saved by not filling that seat? How about training? Can we send people off to training for a week and again absorb their loss into the entire system? And that leads to maybe regional training. What are the benefits as we as a region training together and training alike? However, as the system starts to become more closely aligned, are we unknowingly creating a competitive market where dispatchers can move more freely between PSAPs and look for better paying jobs? Would this put undue pressure on smaller counties? Around here, I don't think that would happen, but these are some things that some of you may consider out there if you're having a similar environment. If regional quality is preserved and there is a net savings for all involved, then it's worth the effort. Now, if all of that isn't cool enough for you, there are no MOUs required. If someone doesn't like the arrangement, then they can unplug. Each county still has access to their own local systems. And just one more word on the local radio system. So we have an AVTEC console interfacing with a Tate radio system running on an EtherStack backbone with an IP interface to the regional PSAPs and an ISSI interface to the Harris radio system located on the INL. Unless I'm mistaken, this is how it's supposed to work. What's the new words? BYOD? Bring your own device. Just make sure it's open standard. If I had the resources to expand the regional infrastructure today, what could I do and with whom? For this discussion, we'll focus specifically on the radio console because that's the one place we have, or the one item we have in place and are ready to roll out. As mentioned, we have the potential of adding Clark County to the picture. So I've added them to this region, but with a slightly different color, at least signifying that they're still in a wait-and-see mode. However, with the data connection today, we can tie straight into CERCOM located in south central Idaho and have all the functionality previously mentioned. Obviously, this would rank super high on the cool factor list, but that comes with a new challenge. Defining what's cool and really what really makes an impact on the services. Will County taxpayers get a direct or indirect benefit in their investment? We're going to have to pay for a connection, and even if Robert with the state allows us to get down there for $200, there has to be justification for that money. And by the way, it turns out it's a good reason to hook in. How is the county going to work, or how's the accounting going to work between these regional locations? It's not a PSAP to PSAP anymore. It's a region to region. Geez, I'm just sitting here making more work for myself. I'll stop there. Here I am discussing interoperability, and at the same time asking why am I doing it. Interoperability, like anything, needs to be implemented with wisdom and have the local taxpayer in mind. West Yellowstone and Yellowstone Park. We could also tie it into them today. Because of the surrounding geographic barriers, it turns out Yellowstone takes 911 calls for parts of Montana and possibly a smaller part of Wyoming. I recently spoke with Kay Lynn, the 911 director of Yellowstone Park, and before I knew it, she was discussing a tie-in to Bonneville County. Again, the question, what is the value to our respective taxpayers? Ironically, there may be an opportunity here, at least for Fremont County. They border Yellowstone, and I can see times when a poaching or lost hikers might bring the two agencies together, so that's worth another look. During the same conversation, Kay Lynn brought up the concept of tying into the National Park web. This would give regional access to all national parks from the Redwood Forest to the Statue of Liberty. I'm sure with just a little negotiation, the Department of Interior will let me right in. Again, ranked really high on the cool factor, but is there justification at the end of the National Park web? Actually, there may be one situation where this interface might come in handy. However, another one to add to the list, we'll get to it later down the road as we continue to press forward with what we have in hand. When we purchase open standards, what we're purchasing is an opportunity. The next steps in our progress. The phone system. Well, we have already purchased that. We ended up with a Microdata system. We believe it to be a winner. It meets the criteria of being NENA I3 compliant. It runs on COTS hardware. And after working with Microdata for the last few months, we believe that it's a good solution for the region. Microdata was recently purchased by TCS, a 911 mobile solution provider. In recent weeks, I've had several conversations with Chris Navinger, the Senior Vice President of TCS. Our conversations have been insightful, giving me the glimpse of the company's business plan. One highlight of interest is knowing that TCS is building a $15 million multi-state test lab intended for emulating a real-world PSINet environment. Currently, Microdata is installing a system for the Navy that is to be implemented on a global scale. They monitor the state of Tennessee, and I believe they're the entire solution for the state of Iowa. Mapping is another area where dramatic changes are underway. After a review of the countywide mapping system, we found several opportunities to reduce costs while improving mapping quality. The county is currently in the process of installing an enterprise-level software package countywide, and the PSAP is installing a SAN server to host the mapping software in-house along with a regional mapping solution. Again, no MOUs required. If someone wants to unplug, they can. Each jurisdiction retains all local mapping capabilities and authorities. However, we will start working closely with a group known as Eastern Idaho Resource Center, or the EIRRC, to help develop a regional emergency response map. Turns out in 2008, our mapping guru, Mike Miller, from Jefferson County, wanted the surrounding counties to come together and create a seamless road layer map for dispatching purposes. Since the initial meeting, this group has been going strong. I don't believe there's another group quite like it in Idaho. Some time back, Pocatello had what they called the Charlotte Fire, burning several homes down. This fire was so big that they called in resources far away from Boise. One item that could have been improved in that process was the access to maps. From that event, we started developing thoughts and ideas and directions on how to better solve a problem like this. We started looking through some forms of virtual routing. So here's the setup. You're driving in from Twin Falls, which is 2 hours away, but you're given instructions via the radio. You get on a wireless device and head to, say, the county webpage. There log in and access with the access code given to you specifically for your unit. There you find the radio channel you'll be using while in Pocatello. You'll find the map and a predefined visual direction on that map telling you how to get where you need to go. There's no need for a physical check on an intimate command unit anymore, unless the IC requests it, of course. So when does the clock start and the expenses begin? It's all software defined now. And it turns out when you're coming in from Twin Falls that you could reroute this unit up Power County, which is the backside of the mountain range where the fire was, and come in from the top. And if we happen to have some form of mobile GPS coordinates in a truck, radios, or phones, we could take those coordinates and put it into a virtual map so the IC could now see where everybody is, keep track of them, make sure they're safe, and reroute them as needed. The voice data recorder. Keeping with regional vision, we've purchased the voice data recorder that has the capability of isolating jurisdictions. This way, independent authorities can maintain their own records, securing ownership and chain of custody. Mass notifications. Nothing too revelatory here. Simply stated what we've got. This isn't robust and user-friendly as what's available on the market. And it's another point of research. And again, as we do so, we will keep in mind. Next generation CAD. This actually came to a little bit of a surprise for me. I had another county approach me and start talking about a common CAD. This is a topic I never would have brought up on my own. It's always been my impression that CAD is one hill that I would never climb, at least not in my lifetime. The CAD is the holy grail. Everybody loves their favorite CAD. Don't mess with CAD. But who knew? Maybe the day will come where we can come down with a common CAD. And if there's a cost-effective way of doing that, I think that's a great goal to go after. It looks like I have a few more minutes left, so I thought I'd talk about a few of the challenges we faced while we were going through this process. If you're going to go down this path, I would suggest that you consider the number of technical personnel and their capabilities that are on staff. It can be overwhelming, considering all the functionality that's now going into your center. For example, we used to be concerned about terrorist attacks, earthquakes, floods, especially over here in eastern Idaho. And those are all important, but now we've got cybersecurity issues, and those rank right in the same level. We're currently in the process of hiring an individual whose job is just to focus on networking and security to make sure our systems stay solid. Now that we're IT-based, we're concerned about viruses getting in. And not that anybody would really care about the little region over in eastern Idaho, but it's an access point for people to get into other locations and do damage. Also, a local paradigm that needed to be overcome is the idea that that a vendor has to be your location with 20 minutes or less in case of a failure. Obviously, this ties the local PSAP's hands. You're stuck with whatever's in the local area. With a lot of research and more discussion with the county commissioners and locals, we've concluded that remote access is the next solution. Well, this was a freeing thought, allowing us to go out for more competitive bids, not being so restrictive, allowing us to get a better product and at a better price. We also had a challenge with the change in thought and technical skills. I'd say probably the biggest challenge of all things was vocabulary. Transferring, for example, radio language into network language. Also training for employees, at least from the technical employee side. We're changing what we're training them on. The whole new world is a completely different direction. Fortunately, we have a few people, again, in our regional think tank that have some of these skills. And as we meet, it's exciting to see these individuals start talking to each other in their geek talk and watch the elevation of every individual as they cross-pollinate and what their capabilities are. Everybody seems to be a professional at something, and it certainly helps to bring up the others' capabilities. I guess I'm to the end. Is there any questions?
There are several questions coming in, Greg, so thank you very much for that presentation. We definitely appreciate it. The first question is from Keith in Michigan, and he asks, did you have a hard time getting network connection between the PSAPs?
Yes, that's a good question, because you're right. We are in rural Idaho, and the biggest challenge we're facing now, Keith, is bandwidth. It's expensive. And so we're trying to define other ways of doing that and getting creative about it. For example, working with Robert in the state and using the state microwave was a good solution. But as we look around, I'm not sure. We like secure lines, and we'll maintain secure lines. But as far as redundancies, any IP connection will work, and then we can just encrypt them as they go through. But I'm sympathized with the question. We've had the same problems here as how to get them out to those rural areas.
Sure thing. The next question comes from Scott in Kansas, and he asks, are you using over-the-air programming for programming of your subscriber radios? To some degree. We still have to bring him in. At least we have a local vendor who takes care of that for us, and I know they have some over-the-air, but it's not as perfected as it should be. We have a lot more work to do in that area. Sure. Wendy in California, she has a question about consolidation. During this process, was there consolidation done between the police and fire agencies?
No. Well, we are all, the PSAPs in this region, all dispatched for all agencies in their counties. So they're all a single PSAP as it is. I think that's the question that Wendy's asking. And so there was no change as far as those groups are concerned. It's just the only change is the collaboration that's happening between the area counties.
Okay, great. Another question from Matt in South Dakota. He just wanted a point of clarification. Does each of the locations have their own dispatch center, or are all four in one building?
They all retain their current locations in the region, and so we're probably we're all half an hour apart at least, and that's, depending on how you look at it, that's the viable part of what we've done. If we create an interchange or a public safety net the way we are hoping to, if one of those locations really does experience a disastrous event, it doesn't matter. The other three are up and it still continues to run. In our particular facility, as we built it out, we've expanded the center. Of course, we're looking for future capacity, and by expanding, we've also put in redundancies of equipment. But for, say, example, I have an individual living in my county that works in Jefferson. Over here, you can have snowstorms that can bury you, and there actually are snow days here anyway. Well, in theory, and what we're trying to build, that individual wouldn't have to drive all the way to Jefferson County now. She could actually come to the Bonneville Center and push on her tab, and everything would come up, and she'd start being able to dispatch those other centers. I recognize, I think I'm reading between the lines, that what we're talking about here is, well, we don't have a cost savings because of the multiple buildings, but we do have an increased value by diversifying. Really, that's what this boils down to, is how much value can we bring to taxpayers? As government entities, we're not concerned with profit. So then what should we be concerned with? It's the value or the return on investment we can actually give to taxpayers who are helping to build this infrastructure and hire these people, so that we can help first responders be more reactive to those citizens who are in need.
Absolutely. That's some pretty neat functionality, too. I think we'll end with a sort of a wrap-up type question from Mike in Saskatoon, Canada. And he asked, do you have any final suggestions on how to get all stakeholders in a process like this to kind of focus on the advantages, on the positives?
Yeah. Boy, and that's the question of the day, isn't it? And that's what this is all about, is we have 4 counties here, and it looks like 5. They're accepting of the idea of trying to think together and work through the process. You know, it always seems to boil down a little bit to common ground. Like I mentioned earlier, we started that think tank, which brought all these different people together, but they all had a common quest. The quest wasn't to build interoperability. It was subjects like, you know, now that we're interoperable, we have security issues. I have an officer with a radio app on his phone, but he's sitting in a mall with 20 Wi-Fis, and he decides to get on the internet. So what's the interlink? How could they possibly get into my IP-based radio now? Well, that kind of theory creates quite a stir amongst IT types. And so they became much closer together, and it boiled down again to what I had mentioned earlier. Trust starts to increase, and people start recognizing each other's intent and one another's capabilities. And so it's kind of a long way around of saying, getting them together and talking about common ground, start building that trust, and hopefully in the end build an infrastructure that profit and benefit the citizens of the county.
Those are definitely good words of advice. Thank you, Greg. Carrie, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Greg. I want to let you know that if we did not get to your question, the speaker has graciously agreed to answer them via email after the live event, so stay tuned if you did not get your question answered. Greg, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, just one final thing. You know, we put these things together, and they're nice and clean. The reality is life is a little bit more messy, and a lot more detailed. So in the end, as Carrie had just offered, if you want to discuss more about this, because I'm not sure we know all the ins and outs, we certainly be open to us or anybody else in the region, be open conversations to help learn and help advance what we're doing here, along with hopefully helping whoever's out there who also would like to advance. And if you see any of us at the APCA or NINA conventions, feel free to pull us over and do a little brainstorming and help us learn as well and become better at what we do. Thanks, Carrie.
Thank you, Greg. And thanks again to all of you for participating today, and to AvTech for making this webcast possible. Before everyone logs off, I want to remind you that the presentation will be archived within 24 to 48 hours at psc.apcointl.org. Please share this presentation with your colleagues. You will be able to download a PDF of the slideshow as well as listening to the event. Thank you again for your attendance, and we really appreciate your time today.